Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of God in Narayan, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna
Punya Shravana Kirtanaha
Punya Shravana Kirtanaha
Hridyantastohya Bhadrani
Bhadrani
Yudunoti Suritsatam Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of a devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly intended. Nashta Preshu Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact.
Jai.
We have a reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's Canto chapter 18, or actually first by Brahmana boy. So it's text 22. Yatranurakta Sahasaiva Dhira Yatranurakta Sahasaiva Dhira Vyapohya Dehadishu Sangam Udam Vyapohya Dehadishu Sangam Udam Vrajanti Tat Parama Hamsyam Vrajanti Tat Parama Hamsam Antyam Yasmin Ahimso Pashyamaha Swadharmaha. We didn't get to that part yet, so now we did. Yasmin Ahimso Pashyama Swadharmaha. Yatranurakta Sahasaiva Dhira Vyapoya Dehadishu Sangam Udam Vrajanti Tat Parama Hamsyam Antyam Yasmin Ahimso Pashama Swadharmaha Yatranurakta Sahasaiva Dhira Vyapoya Dehadishu Sangam Udam Vrajanti Tat Parama Hamsyam Antyam Yasmin Ahimso Pashama Swadharmaha Yatranurakta Sahasaiva Dhira Vyapoya Dehadishu Sangam Udam Vrajanti Tat Parama Hamsyam Antyam Yasmin Ahimso Pashama Swadharmaha
Yatranurakta Sahasaiva Dhira Vyapoya Dehadishu Sangam Udam Vrajanti Tat Paramahamsyam Antyam Yasmin Ahimso Pasama Swadharma
Yakran Sahasaiva Dhira
Rakta Sahasaiva Dhira
Rapohe Danisu Sangha Udam
Vyapohadishu Sangam Udam
Rajani Tat Paramahamsa Atyam
Vrajanti Tat Paramahamsyam Antyam
Yasmin Ahimso Pasama Swati Girmaha
Yasmin Ahimso Pasama Swadharmaha Yaktanurakta Sahasaiva Dhira Vyapoya Dehadishu Sangam Udam Vrajanti Tat Paramahamsyam Antyam Yasmin Ahimso Pasama Dharma
Yatranurakta Saha
Yatranurakta sahasaiva dhira. Dehadisu sangam udam. Brajanti tatparamahsyam antyam. Yasmin ahim sopasamam swadharma.
Yatranurakta sahasaiva dhira.
Yatranurakta sahasaiva dhira.
Dehadisu sangam udam.
Dehadisu sangam udam.
Brajanti tatparamahsyam antyam.
Brajanti tatparamahsyam antyam.
Yasmin ahim sopasama swadharma.
Yasmin ahim sopasama swadharma.
Yatranurakta sahasavidira.
Yatranurakta sahasaiva.
Yapuyaya dehadisu sangam.
Yapuya dehadisu sangam udam.
Janti tatparamahsyam antyam.
Brajanti tatparamahsyam antyam.
Yasmin ahim sopasama swadharma.
Yasmin ahim sopasama swadharma.
Anybody left? Sound like everybody went. Okay. So word meanings. Yatra, unto whom, anuraktaha, firmly attached, sahasa, all of a sudden, eva, certainly, dhiraha, self-control, vyapoya, leaving aside, deha, the gross body and subtle mind, adishu, relating to, sangam, attachment, udham, taken to, vrajanti, go away, tat, that, paramahamsyam, the highest stage of perfection, antyam, and beyond that, yasmin, in which, ahimsa, non-violence, upashamaha, and renunciation, swadharmaha, consequential occupation. Okay, so the translation, purport, I'll read out by Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila
I'll
Prabhupada.
read the translation through first. Self-controlled persons who are attached to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna can all of a sudden give up the world of material attachment, including the gross body and subtle mind, and go away to attain the highest perfection of the renounced order of life, by which non-violence and renunciation are consequential. Let's repeat. Self-controlled persons who are attached to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna can all of a sudden give up the world of material attachment, including the gross body and subtle mind, and go away to attain the highest perfection of the renounced order of life, by which non-violence and renunciation are consequential. Report by only the self-controlled can gradually be attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Self-controlled means not indulging in sense enjoyment more than is necessary. And those who are not self-controlled are given over to sense enjoyment. Dry philosophical speculation is a subtle sense enjoyment of the mind. Sense enjoyment leads one to the path of darkness. Those who are self-controlled can make progress on the path of liberation from the conditional life of material existence. The Vedas therefore enjoin that one should not go on the path of darkness, but should make a progressive march toward the path of light or liberation. Self-control is actually achieved not by artificially stopping the senses from material enjoyment, but by becoming factually attached to the Supreme Lord by engaging one's unalloyed senses in the transcendental service of the Lord. The senses cannot be forcibly curbed, but they can be given proper engagement. Purified senses, therefore, are always engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This perfectional stage of sense engagement is called Bhakti Yoga. So those who are attached to the means of Bhakti Yoga are factually self-controlled and can all of a sudden give up their homely or bodily attachment for the service of the Lord. This is called the Paramahamsa stage. Hamsas, or swans, accept only milk out of a mixture of milk and water. Similarly, those who accept the service of the Lord instead of Maya's service are called the Paramahamsas. They are naturally qualified with all the good attributes, such as pridelessness, freedom from vanity, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, respectability, worship, devotion, and sincerity. All these godly qualities exist in the devotee of the Lord spontaneously. Such Paramahamsas, who are completely given up to the service of the Lord, are very rare. They are very rare even amongst the liberated souls. Real nonviolence means freedom from envy. In this world, everyone is envious of his fellow being, but a perfect Paramahamsa, being completely given up to the service of the Lord, is perfectly non-envious. He loves every living being in relation with the Supreme Lord. Real renunciation means perfect dependence on God. Every living being is dependent on someone else because he is so made. Actually, everyone is dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Lord. But when one forgets his relation with the Lord, he becomes dependent on the conditions of material nature. Renunciation means renouncing one's dependence on the condition of material nature, on the conditions of material nature, and thus becoming completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Real independence means complete faith in the mercy of the Lord without dependence on the conditions of matter. This Paramahamsa stage is the highest perfectional stage of Bhakti Yoga, the process of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Amrilitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge and offered my respectful obeisances unto him. So there's three things clearly said in the verse here, and one more is clearly implied. And so those things are discussed in this purport. One is self-control, and implied is devotional service, because who are attached to the Supreme Lord of Krishna and go away to attain the highest perfection of the renounced order of life, by which nonviolence and renunciation are consequential. I looked up so anyways, self-control, nonviolence, and renunciation, and implied is devotional service, because that's what you go away and you engage in. So I looked up consequential, and kind of means as a result of, but it's kind of like a side thing, as a result of, one of the definitions. So the idea here is, if you have Krishna, if you have your dependence on Krishna, your relationship with Krishna and your Bhakti Yoga, then along with it comes nonviolence and renunciation. So just like liberation stands at the door knocking, if you do pure devotional service to Krishna, liberation comes and serves you, stands at the door knocking. You don't have to seek liberation. So same thing here. So we're discussing self-control, and the first thing about self-control is you can't control your senses by curbing them. Just stop it. People can appear to do so for a while, but something leaks out or something explodes or something, or you quit. And it can't be, because senses are active and they're real, and you can't just not engage them for very long, and they'll catch up with you. So we are not told to do that. We are told to engage our senses in Krishna's service. So that's the, in fact, Well, that's for self-control. We are given 4 regulative principles and the positive process of chanting and activities of devotional service. So people who are would be only given 4 regulative principles. And what do they do now? They don't get to do those things. So pretty soon they'll do those things again. So we have 4 regulative principles to control our senses, and we have the process of Bhakti Yoga to apply our senses in something better. It's just like the song for prasadam. I could say, I don't think I can say it all in English, and I did for a while. But anyways, it's about how we're engaging our tongue in this nice tasting prasadam and in chanting the holy names, and in that way we're protected from all the sinful activities and all the paths leading to death in our senses. The body's full of the body's a network of senses that are pathways leading to death. And so this prasadam saves us. Chanting the holy name saves us. The whole process of Bhakti Yoga saves us because we have something better to do. Whereas if you're just engaging your senses, it's a pathway to darkness. It gives you nothing. It gives you, in my life, even taking the narrow part of my life, that the artwork. When I did mundane paintings, I would end up frustrated. There's no answers here. This doesn't go anywhere. It's not very satisfying. Whereas if I paint Krishna, it goes somewhere. It's satisfying. So it's a different thing. It's engaging my desire for sense gratification. I want that paint to come out right. I want that picture to look pretty. I want it to be a certain style. I want the drawing right. So that's my sense gratification, but I'm engaging it in Krishna's service. It's like dressing the deities too. You want certain colors to go together, the jewelry to look nice together, and you want everything to look nice, but it's for Krishna's service. So then it becomes satisfying. If you're just going to be like an interior decorator for some rich person or something like that, and that's all you do, you will not be satisfied in the same way. You'll still be searching in your life. There won't be any answers in it. There's no answers in the material world. The answers we need are, who am I and what's my connection? Who's God and how do I relate to Him? Those are the answers. Why am I suffering? Not just giving more sense gratification in this world of suffering, and somehow I'll put band-aids on my suffering by some sense gratification. We're looking for answers. So some people don't want to accept answers where they are, so they just want to keep looking what they're looking. Still looking, they just like the quest. They don't want to actually get the answers. Unfortunately, there are people like that. But anyway, there are no answers in sense gratification. You just have to keep trying to get that feeling again, and some days it works and some days it doesn't, and in the end you feel unsatisfied. So even mental speculation, and it doesn't mean just figuring out philosophy. We do that. We'll do that and try to figure out why something is the way it is or something like that. We go around and around about it. And that's a kind of mental speculation too. So we have to learn how to turn that to Krishna and surrender to Krishna about it and control that speculation. We have all the guidelines we need for how to live a nice life. Even if the other guys don't always live a nice life, we know what we're supposed to do. We can just do that. And that way we'll be peaceful. And if everybody remembers that principle, and everybody remembers all of Prabhupada's instructions and Krishna's instructions, and the whole Parampara's instructions, and try to act like that, then we'll all get it right. But we do forget, we do this sense gratification, which goes nowhere, and frustrates. So even mental speculation goes nowhere. So we have to remember to apply what we learn about Bhakti Yoga, how to think, how to act, as well as the particular activities of devotional service. All this is given in light of knowledge that we are not this body, we're eternal spirit souls related to Krishna. And we've been in illusion, we can get out of illusion by following this path and getting this transcendental knowledge. Then we can be off the path of darkness, which is sense gratification or the seeking of sense gratification again and again and again where there are no answers, to a path of light, to self-control by engaging these senses in the activities of Krishna consciousness. So if we can do that, let me read about that first in go to, this is the first part of, first verse of Nectar of Instruction, first book. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. Well, how do we do that? We'd be engaging, let's see, this is probably a little quick, but looks like we're not reading. And there's first a line about the less intelligent person has to learn the hard way versus someone who listens. Atonement is like the elephant's bathing. Let's see. So if one is fortunate enough to get the association of a pure devotee, he can easily surpass all the practices for controlling the mind by the mystic yoga process simply by following the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness, refraining from illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling, and by engaging in the service of the Supreme Lord under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master. So let's see. First, one must control his speaking power. Every one of us has a power of speech. As soon as we get an opportunity, we begin to speak. If we do not speak about Krishna consciousness, we speak about all sorts of nonsense. So we've been given Krishna consciousness to speak about, and we've been given 16 rounds of japa, which takes up a good part of our speaking time, and then Srimad Bhagavatam class, and so on. We have all these ways to control our speaking, and we, by these experiences, part of the day, we get the idea how to live the rest of our day. So if we want that nice, that high feeling that we get, that transcendental feeling that we get from chanting or from discussing Bhagavatam, we can stay kind of on that platform by trying to talk in a Krishna conscious way about Krishna conscious things. So we learn this day by day by practice, and it gradually does, hopefully does self in. We have to surrender to the process, which surrender is another word here. Let's see. Move on to next. How do we get on? So it said those who are attached to the means of bhakti yoga are factually self-controlled and can all of a sudden give up their home or bodily attachment for the service of the Lord. This is called the Madhava-priya stage. It is also surrender. Does it say? Let me discuss the word surrender. Surrender is what this is about. So, anyway, a person can all of a sudden surrender if one is actually attached to the means of bhakti yoga and actually on this platform. Now he's talking, in a way, he's talking about that rare person which we might excuse ourselves and say, well, you know, a Paramahamsa is really rare. And I'm not a Paramahamsa, and I'm not puffed up, and not thinking I am, so, you know, what do you expect? But actually, in a way, he's talking to all of us, because he gave us the means, all of us, to become Paramahamsas. In fact, if we're all supposed to go back to Godhead, that's what they are up there, and that's what we have to become. So, and that's what we were all meant to be. We're all eternal, pure spirit souls. And pure spirit souls are naturally like Paramahamsas. So all we need to do is uncover it. We're not puffed up when we say that we are naturally that. We're just understanding what a soul is. So if we are actually in our pure stage and go back to Godhead, that's what it is up there. And so we can be that here. Any one of us can be that here. So this is the process. So he's speaking about the rarity of the Paramahamsa, and he's also speaking to all of us about how to do it. So if we, in fact, when the movement started, you look around you, and everybody gave up their bodily conception of life, their bodily identity, their homes and everything, and they joined the movement and endured all kinds of austerity and worked so hard just to please Krishna, just to please Prabhupada. And it was possible, because they had the association of a pure devotee who was a Paramahamsa, and a process which allowed that. And by associating, here's these qualified, Paramahamsa is naturally qualified with all the good attributes, such as pridelessness, freedom from vanity, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, respectability, worship, devotion, and sincerity. All these godly qualities exist in the devotee of the Lord spontaneously. Now, it's possible someone who has not actually made the advancement yet, but is in the association of a pure devotee and acting under his instructions and following his footsteps, would show evidence of these qualities also. Just by association. It rubs off. And Prabhupada's personal spiritual power empowered all his disciples to do amazing things and show all kinds of good qualities. And even after Prabhupada left, then it's like, you got to face the fact you have to actually make the progress, because sometimes, you find out, oh, without Prabhupada, and, who am I really? So you got to actually make the progress. You got to actually grow. But a lot of progress was made just by serving Prabhupada. So a lot of advancement was made during his time anyways. But then, still you have to fly on an airplane. You have to... You do have to make your own advancement, too. We can't just rely on Prabhupada's coattails, you say, because it rubs off. We have to actually follow the process, follow the footsteps, and make our advancement. But I remember like 10, 20 years ago, devotees were saying, I've been chanting for 20 years and it's not working. Well, now we've been chanting 30 years, I've been chanting 30 years, some have been chanting 40 years, and you start to say, well, I do notice some actual progress has been made. There's something different. So, it does work, but I guess you need more than 20 years. But it can be immediately, but people have been chanting for a long time, and the gradual progress is made. So, in this direction. So, what are the other, let's see, nonviolent, in the verse, nonviolence and renunciation are consequential, as in, I think in this context it would mean like side effects. It looks like from the way he's written the purport. There would be like side effects of this total surrender. And so he's talking about real nonviolence means freedom from envy. So we can stop all the actions of violence, like give up meat eating and so on, and sometimes we devour one another's happiness and reputation. So still the envy is there. Maybe we don't no longer want the cow's body for ourselves, but somehow we maybe want to destroy somebody, their reputation or something. So we have to become totally aware of the envy in the heart, because that's what we're here. Everybody has envy in their heart, because that's where we came. We wanted to be Krishna. That's the biggest envy. And then we are here, and then anybody else has anything good, we want it because that's envy. So we either want it or we just don't want them to have anything. Some kind of envy, jealousy, that. So we have to deeply understand that real nonviolence means freedom from envy. In this world, everyone is envious of his fellow being. But a perfect Paramahamsa, being completely given up to the service of the Lord, is perfectly non-envious. He loves every living being in relation with the Supreme Lord. We have to practice that. We can consciously practice that. And gradually, by chanting and by practicing meditation that way, practicing being grateful for the devotees. We get something from everybody around here. And everybody contributes something. Everybody helps us grow. So that means they have something. They're doing some devotional service. So we should be grateful. Here we are among devotees. And how wonderful it is to be among people who believe in Krishna and believe in trying to follow this path. Everybody's got some realization, and it helps. It contributes. So that kind of gratitude and humility, to understand, well, everybody's a beautiful spirit soul. We may not be first-class devotees to see that everybody is a pure devotee, but everybody is underneath everything, and we can practice meditating that way. We can practice trying to see people that way, that everybody is actually a beautiful spirit soul in the spiritual world. In a sense, we're there. We have a constitutional position there. We have a constitutional nature, and it's just like basically waiting for us to reawaken it, to reawaken and be there. And everybody has that. Every soul, even the worst people, are actually ultimately from Goloka Vrindavan and are beautiful souls. So we practice thinking like that, practice seeing like that, and hope for them that their misery will end and that they'll understand and be able to go back to Godhead. So Krishna is not envious of us. Even though we were envious of Krishna, that was our free will choice to be envious of Krishna. Nothing up there influences you. There is no Maya, there are no modes, there's nothing like that. We just decided to be envious and want to be Krishna instead of serve Krishna. And because we have that free will, Krishna doesn't interfere. He may have tried to persuade us a little bit, but we saw our determination, well, you have free will. And Krishna also has free will. Krishna did not decide to be envious of us. Krishna did not decide to give up our association. Therefore, he doesn't. He comes as super soul. Wherever the soul goes, he comes invisibly as super soul. And he's invisible because we don't want to see him. And because we want to be him. So he cooperates, and he comes more formally. But super soul is not different from Krishna. But he just shows his formal, if you could see him, and he comes as, I'm still God, I'm still in control, and I'm still your friend, I'm still with you. But it's more restrained. So he accompanies us as a Vishnu form. He's a little more restrained. But he's very happy. As soon as we start returning to him again, he'll turn into Krishna in the heart. As soon as because he says that he takes the form of whatever way one worships him. So it's true when one meditates, one thinks of Krishna, because we have Krishna book, we have Krishna on the altar, we always talks about Krishna. So we chant Hare Krishna, we think about Krishna, we picture Krishna. And so Super Soul is helping that. We may not directly see, or maybe somebody does, but we may not directly see him, but he helps us in by the process of mental, imagination, but the ability to have a picture in the mind. And he empowers that so we can see him. So it's not just our picture, it's also Krishna in that picture. So he has never, by his free will is not to give up our association, therefore he doesn't. And his free will is to keep on helping us, to keep on being a friend. So as formal God, Vishnu, and as a friend who accompanies us through everything and tries to help us, he's there. But because we didn't want to see him, he makes himself invisible. So that's Krishna's free will in operation. Our free will and Krishna's free will. So by our free will, we want to, but our free will now is all tangled up. We're attached to the body and the mind and everything. So we got to disentangle our free will, our soul, from the body and mind. So that's where self-control comes in, because self-control means I'm not the slave of my senses. I'm going to try to control them and apply them to Krishna's service since I got them. And that in that way, practice the knowledge that I'm an eternal spirit soul and I'm not a slave of these senses. And in that way, gradually become transcendental to them, gradually become free of them, in control of them, free of their influence. And that way become self-controlled persons who are attached to the Supreme Lord, Krishna. So we have to have the self-control, the regulative principles, and we have to have the attachment, japa, bhakti yoga, kirtan, deities, and so on, and stories, lila, can all of a sudden give up the world of material attachment. So then we can be truly renounced. We can be actually give our lives to Krishna, because real renunciation is that. It's non-violence and renunciation are side effects. So we renounce from the material world. So, then it also says, real renunciation means perfect dependence on God. So every living entity is dependent on somebody. Every living entity is dependent on God. And sometimes we have this pride thing, or this kind of false nobility or something, that I don't want to be dependent on anybody else. We're dependent, face it. We're very dependent, but we're dependent on Krishna. And if we don't want to be dependent on Krishna, if we want to be independent or dependent on ourselves, that means we're dependent on our body. The body which is not me, has to work for me, right? Or else I'm in trouble. And the surroundings have to be right. You know, if the economy goes bad, if I lose all my money, then how can I take care of myself, etc., etc. So we are actually not independent, although when we get all the material circumstances lined up, we can actually believe. We can be in illusion and believe that we are independent, but we're not. That's a philosophical thing we have to understand. By observation, you can observe that I'm not this body, and everything I want to do independently depends on the body working. Break a leg and see how independent you are. So we are dependent. So real renunciation means we're dependent on Krishna, not these other things. That's a pretty interesting concept. So let's see. Real independence means complete faith in the mercy of the Lord without dependence on the conditions of matter. So that brings to mind what surrender. There are 6 processes of surrender. I have to look at it because 2 of them I have trouble saying. Right, they're not the ones I want to talk about, but these are the 6 steps of surrender. 1, accept what is favorable to pure devotional service. 2, reject what is unfavorable to pure devotional service. 3, Krishna is my only maintainer or provider. And 4, Krishna is my only protector. 5, humility before Krishna, which is almost the same as 3 and 4. 6, dedication of self to Krishna. These are the 6 steps of surrender. Sharanagati, surrender to Krishna. So, we're in this material world, so there's a lot of things favorable and unfavorable. We have to choose. This is part of controlling our senses. We have to examine things, one thing at a time, and examine. Is this helping me or hindering me? Then we have to have the courage and the renunciation to give up or change those things that are not favorable to pure devotional service. One thing, the process helps us make a big start. The 4 regs, the activities of devotional service that's given. It's real easy to step into that. And you have to let the devotees train you and stuff a little bit, but and you have to change your habits, but you have the group momentum, you have peer group and everything, and it supports. And it's pretty cut and dried and simple to participate, and that brings you a lot of steps forward in accepting what is favorable and rejecting what is unfavorable to pure devotional service. So then we have to go further, and that's sort of like anartha nivritti too. There's a stage after you decide that you have some faith in this, or this is worthwhile and you want it, this devotional practice, and then you have then you want to associate with the devotees, and then you go get a spiritual master, get initiation, and get trained up. Okay, then all this as part of the process tells you how to walk the path right, and the path gives you the things that are favorable to devotional service, and helps get rid of the things that are unfavorable. But then deeper comes anartha nivritti. You got unwanted things in your heart that are not favorable. Attachments, desires, old feelings, misapplication of bhakti yoga sometimes. There's different kinds of anarthas in the heart, things that are not wanted. Artha means something wanted, anartha not wanted. And anartha nivritti means getting rid of them. So it's a long process. So there's a lot of things that are subconscious. We don't even know at first what we have in us that's in the way. So as the years pass, things surface, or sometimes devotees point them out to you. No, I'm not like that. Well, maybe I am. And so then you have to work on it. So as you see something you don't like about yourself, I'm not really like that, but I have to admit I just saw it. And so you have to work on it, you have to analyze it. And Krishna helps. There's some kinds of things we have to work on ourselves, some kinds of things Krishna takes away. So all this has to go on. This is part of surrender, accepting what is favorable to pure devotional service and rejecting what is unfavorable. So then Krishna is the only maintainer or provider, and Krishna is the only protection. So this goes along with what's being said in the purport. Not dependent on the conditions of material nature, not dependent on material arrangements, but dependent on Krishna. Of course, we're in the middle of the material world, and there's material arrangements. Anyway, we have to work with them. Even a Paramahamsa has to do certain things that are material, but to understand it as coming from Krishna and to do it that way. That Krishna is the maintainer, Krishna is the provider. A sannyasi is supposed to be someone who's ready to be totally independent of any material support and just dependent on Krishna. So that's supposed to be. And then humility before Krishna is like basically to know these things. Like you're everything to me, Krishna. I'm nothing without you. You are great. I'm small. I'm dependent. That's humility. Actual humility toward anybody, toward everybody is centered on humility toward Krishna. To know I'm small, I'm dependent on Krishna. Then you can understand other people's struggles and stuff better. And then this was a dedication of the self to Krishna, which is what this goal of this verse is. I shall try to describe page. Okay, what is the next verse? Krishna, a self-controlled person who's attached to the Supreme Lord, self-Krishna, Sri Krishna, we've discussed all of this attachment and self-control, can all of a sudden give up the world of material attachment, including the gross body and subtle mind, and go away to attain the highest perfection. And Prabhupada explains in the purport this is devotion to Krishna. And so the Paramahamsa is anybody who can do that for real. So this is our path. We should all be able to do it. Parikshit Maharaj had to do it because he was facing his death in 7 days. He didn't have to do it. He did it. All of a sudden he gave up his kingdom. We have been gradually doing this. So we can do gradually more and more. That's our path. Okay, I just ran out. Okay. Do I see a hand up? Yes. I saw Kavali first.
So you were mentioning a very important point about okay, we're not Paramahamsas and we're not Uttamadhikaris, but we can start beginning to think like that. Like it says in Bhagavad Gita, there's the ant, the dog eater, the dog, the brahmana, the elephant, they're all equal spiritually. And also we know that the pure spirit soul is very beautiful and has beautiful qualities. So, and we know that Srila Prabhupada, he was a Uttamadhikari, but he was acting on the Madhava-priya platform. So how are we to understand when he's talking about demons and devotees, and he'll say those ones that don't, that are only acting for their pure pleasure and don't put God in the center, I've heard him say, and I've read this, they have no good qualities. So how are we supposed to feel when we hear, okay, Prabhupada himself is saying these people have no good qualities. And I felt that, wait, how could that be? Because everyone underneath has wonderful qualities, and sometimes those ones that have no good qualities, whatever, they have good qualities. So how are we supposed to see that?
That's the difference between the Uttamadhikari platform and the Madhava-priya platform. One thing, the Madhava-priya can't see beyond that. You can understand the principle because the words are there and you understand the words, but you can't really see like a Uttamadhikari. You can see it. And so the Madhava-priya level, so nobody's a demon permanently. Although they could choose to stay that way as it permanently.
What Prabhupada says, they have no good qualities.
Yes, but they don't. If they
wow.
By the definition of a good quality, everybody's got the potential of good qualities. Everybody had good qualities in the spiritual world, but if they are non-active and are completely covered over, then for practical purposes they have no good qualities, and that's a Madhava-priya understanding. We can't. Number one, we can't credit them for good qualities because they're for self-centered reasons. They're not doing it really for good qualities like a devotee. And we have to understand that when somebody is not going to accept, we have to be able to identify that too, because preaching is on the Madhava-priya platform. And also we are not, if we try to be on the Uttamadhikari platform, we'll be pretending a lot of sentimentality and we'll get in trouble somehow. So Yeah, Prabhupada could speak on all levels. A lot of times it seems like there is a contradiction, but actually it's all part of the whole. So it's not really a contradiction, but it's different levels of looking. And nobody is a demon eternally, unless by choice they eternally keep making that decision. But at some point in time they weren't in the spiritual world and they have the potential to go back. So nobody is eternally, not like there are demon souls. There's nothing like that. And Jesse's next, and then.
Well,
okay.
You know, you just said there's no eternally damned or whatever people like that. But what is Nityabhada then? Is it Nityabhada eternally?
How does Prabhupada say it?
Spiritual world?
Prabhupada has some. I forget what word he uses. If anybody comes up with it.
Well,
It's
what I would call is that you've been here so long.
It's as if.
As if you calculate in terms of all the kalpas and the lifetimes. It's as if and as far as the other part of they have no good qualities, but we do discriminate, but we also, in an undiscriminate way, allow people to hear the holy name and to distribute prasadam. So even those who are not, not favorable to preach to because they're so stubbornly against, they're not innocent. So therefore we just, it's called Agyata Sukriti. Secretly we try to purify them.
Even a great big demon, a really evil demon, we can try to give them some prasadam or something, even as a weapon against their evilness.
Yeah.
So, and try to help them ultimately. But let's see this. Jesse had a hand up, and somebody back there, but I think Mahalakshmi. Okay, I couldn't see who. But you still have your hand up?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to say thank you for the very nice presentation. I was listening outside. And my question is, you brought up some really great, philosophical points, but I'm curious, how does any of this relate to Varnashram?
Varnashram is a...
That was a little joke, actually.
That's a segue.
I could launch into an explanation. It's a practical guidance for how to live your life in such a way that it supports, in other words, it gets rid of some of the things that don't support pure devotional service and puts, sits on the way. How's that in a nutshell?
Ecstatic.
Is that all you wanted to say?
Yeah, that was it.
It's a segue. It was Varnashram minds.
Mahalakshmi.
Well, one thing I was going to say too about what Kaivali had brought up also is that, sometimes when you hear Srila Prabhupada say something like they have no good qualities, it's but then you hear him say they have no good qualities until you put Krishna in the front. And then all of a sudden,
Zeros.
all their zeros, because it's temporary.
Yeah.
So what is the use of a good quality that if you're not putting Krishna in the center, what's the use of it? It's just like any other endeavor that we do. Of course, there's so many times Prabhupada will, say the philanthropist or whatever, that they're doing, mode of goodness work which will elevate them. So of course those are good qualities, but like you're saying, in the big scope of things, it's not going to get you back home, back to Godhead until you put Krishna.
And I think he also meant that there's some extended selfishness, even when we think we see good qualities in a non-devotee, than somebody who's not a devotee. Some people in some religions are baby devotees, they just don't have the full knowledge like we have, but they're like some kind of degree of devotee. And but anyway, it's not connected to God. It's going to be connected to bodily consciousness and extended selfishness. Ultimately, you're going to find that it breaks down to that and disappoints. So he also meant that too. So both are true. But like there sometimes appears to be contradictions in what Prabhupada says, and sometimes devotees see one thing and they latch onto it, and then devotees who are saying the other thing, they just kind of rationalize and deny and argue out that point that was also from Prabhupada, and then they make political wars or something. Right. So Prabhupada says a lot of things, and we have to understand all of the things that he says in relation to all the other things. They're all part of the whole. You can't fit in one sentence the whole truth, ever. So, I mean, to cover all the details.
Krishna's do Bhagavatam.
Yeah, but you know, in the sense of all the details, we also have to deal with. So you can't. So if he says one detail in one sentence and other details in another sentence, the devotee shouldn't be fighting over it. Should try to understand the whole. Krishna's one.
Just to join that for a second, and then a question comment. We admire philanthropic business people in this world. They give millions of dollars to help and all. But really, it was explained, and the Krishna conscious philosophy on that is that they are really satisfying themselves, the extension of themselves. That they are either engaged in subtle sex of adoration, distinction, and profit. Mm-hmm. You know, they're getting something out of it, or it's the extension of their self. They help their family, they help their neighborhood,
They're
they help their country.
They're drowning persons.
Right, so it's an extension of themselves, and that's really a higher thought that we think for people to be great. I remember the other comment was the story about the mosquitoes. And Prabhupada's, they said, oh, there are mosquitoes here. He said, leave them be. And then they started biting. He said, they're attacking now. You can kill them. Yeah. And so when it seems like that's a little soul in that mosquito bite. And the other night, that soul is there. And so the other night we had a spider in the back in the Bajari area that you gingerly took out. Yeah, but if that was a black widow or a brown recluse, that would not be advised to do that. And probably say,
if they're poisonous, you can release them from that body.
Right.
Because that
so
is really envious.
It's a practicality. But the envy of somebody who wants a piece of meat, they envy the cow for their body.
They believe they're going to get big and strong by eating that because they want the cow's strength.
They want the cow's body. So, and that's for non-violence, means freedom from envy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, anything else? John, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, when looking at free will and sense gratification, I find it to be a very interesting subject. Like, how much would Prabhupada like tolerate in the beginning, and then as time went on, would he say, it's okay to do like less or more, or depending on the situation? I'm not really sure. When you were talking about sense gratification, you were saying it's it's part of obviously the material world, but it's also, I guess, whether we like it or not, part of Krishna consciousness too.
What's your question?
My question is how much do we, over time do we try to diminish the amount of sense gratification that we have?
Well, this is where the answer to Jesse's question comes in, because about Varnashram, it gives a gradual way to have sense gratification in a controlled way. Varnashram does, because you're allowed to have families, and so you're allowed to do what feels good in your kind of work. It feels good to you to do, and it gratifies your senses somehow. Like some people want to build things, or some people want to whatever, grow things, or whatever kind of thing you like to do, make money, what your senses want to do because of the kind of body you have. You get a structure to do it in, and a way to do it in service to the others in relation to Krishna. And that's Varnashram.
So psychophysical? It's
your psychophysical nature. If you got your psychophysical nature by your karma, which means by your activities previously, and your developing interests and your evolution as a soul going through different bodies, so you have a particular body with particular abilities and desires. You'd be like, you may not want to be an opera singer. You got vocal cords too, but you may not want to do that. You may want to build a house. So you can do something that is actually for performing singers. There's a place in Varnashram. As long as it's Krishna conscious activities. But you can sing for Krishna. You could be in a play. You can sing songs and bhajans for Krishna, or be in a play or something. Or you can build houses for devotees. There's a place in Varnashram. You know what Varnashram is, right? Should I run over it now, or?
I kind of got an idea of what it is.
It's four types of workers and 4 stages of life.
Yeah.
All of this is naturally occurring. But it's a system that organizes it in a way that's God conscious and focuses on duty and qualities that are in whatever position you're in. There's certain qualities you should and can be developing, and certain duties they should be aware of in relation to others and to God. So it's a system that gives you that kind of structure to help control your senses. And then of course we have the pure bhakti activities. We have 4 ranks, and we have all these activities, chanting and all the temple activities and books and everything. So we have both ways to give us a start. And of course when somebody is brand new, you just didn't give them some prasadam and holy names, give them a book or something and be friendly and everything and make it nice for them. And they don't know anything yet about what they shouldn't be doing. And they get attached to it, and then you start breaking the news to them that we have regulative principles. And then they gradually start learning that we have structured activities in a nice way that you can live your life if you follow the guidelines and so on. So it's gradual. In the beginning, Prabhupada didn't require anything of people except that they chant with him. In the beginning, he'd come to his Bhagavad Gita classes. And then he gradually told them stuff.
So they were permitted to eat meat if they did?
Not permitted to eat meat, no, but if somebody was eating meat and they came to his classes and they participated in the kirtans, he didn't say, "Go away, you sinner." He said, "Well, you didn't participate in the kirtan, you come to the class." And then he would give prasadam. And then he would talk about the regular principles gradually. And so people, and the other devotees would talk to him and tell him about it. And of course, if you live then there's a certain standard you have to come up to live with devotees. So it's not like we allow meat eating, we coexist with it and try to help people come away from it. And then we have the standard, if you actually join us, there's a standard like that. And then of course even that can be improved gradually. Actually, it's interesting that among the anarthas, and it has there are lists of anarthas, unwanted things that come up. There's a list of kind of advanced understanding things, deep anarthas that come up. And believe it or not, in that list is animal killing. Thought we gave that up when we gave up eating meat. And still there's that list. Well, do people kill bugs too easily? Do people use chemicals that harm animals or harm the environment? These things that you get more deeply aware of. So animal killing may still be going on, even though you're eating meat. So it's still a process, always a gradual process of improvement and more purification. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, all glories. Thank you all very much. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam.
Thank you very much.